And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again with another instalment of my weekly series, Till the Fabled End. And today we are looking at this, which is Fables Deluxe Edition, Volume 13. What we have here is the cover, dust jacket cover, dust jacket spine, again completely in keeping with the sort of design we've seen before, and the back of the dust jacket here. So, as usual, once upon a time, a little bit of a very generic blurb about Fables, and a few other details. So, really nice, really well done dust jacket there. Inside flap is the usual pull quotes. Rear flap is the biography of Bill Willingham. And then the inside end pages are a purple hinted kind of New York skyline. Looking underneath the DJ, we have the textless or virgin variant of the cover, which is nice. Really nice cover artwork, very consistent throughout the series. So let's dive into it and have a look what this particular volume contains. So as you can see here, this was originally published in single magazine form as Fables 114 to 129. Here we have the actual arcs involved. We've got a bit of a Wizard of Oz story, the Cubs in Toyland story, which we'll come to in a moment, the Destiny game, and then a Snow White story. And then the usual bonus features. Keeping in line with last week's video, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail than I have done previously here, and then maybe some slight spoilers. So we've got this usual intro from someone here. It was okay. We then have a Fables cover, and then getting into the story about the Land of Oz. Now, this was quite a good story. It's about Buffkin after Buffkin's escaped the admin office and he's returned to Oz. It's pretty cool. It's obviously very much an Oz-based story, and it then ends with a very compressed series of vignettes of Buffkin kind of living his life over several hundred years, I think, having a family, settling down, a variety of other things. It does have this slightly Scotty Young-esque artwork, which works quite well for the story. It works quite well for Oz-based stories. I guess that's why Scotty Young did Oz. But obviously the artist here isn't Scotty Young, it's Sean McManus. But it definitely has that kind of vibe. And it then basically just goes on about Buffkin becoming a bit of a hero and a bit of a legend and just kind of living his life and moving on, settling down, and eventually just, passing away. So that's that whole story. It's fun, but it does feel like quite accelerated closure. So to some extent, it does make me wonder like how much of that was planned in advance or how much they just decided to just wrap it up. That then takes us into the Cubs in Toyland story. Now, this is a story set, obviously, at this time. So it's set after Mr. Dark is vanquished in the last volume, and then this arc sort of goes from A to B chronologically. Then the arc that follows this, which is the Snow White arc, happens at the same time, so they both end with the same kind of final panel or scene. So you can imagine them as two parallel trade paperbacks, and I think they are trade paperbacks, that converge onto one point. So we'll talk about that in a second. What this story is about, it's about the kids. So Snow White and Bigby have a family at this point with lots of children, and it's about what happened to their children, how their children kind of grow up and interact and various things. It's really, really good. I cannot stress that enough. This is what Fables is about. This is absolutely top tier, peak storytelling. It introduces a new realm of Fables, which is Toyland, which is really kind of macabre and sinister. As you can see here, it's populated by destroyed or damaged toys. And it's just a brilliant story. It goes on for several issues, has many twists and turns, is really well written. The interaction of the kids, the characterization of the parents, the way these toys kind of interact with one of Bigby's kids as well is just really interesting. It has faint vibes of that thing in, I think it was Toy Story 3, where you have the evil toys and the good toys and that sort of thing. But it's just, broadly, it's just very original. It's very well put together, and I really enjoyed it. Now, this is the kind of thought-out, clever, intelligent mythos that Fables should really be about. and it was just great to read and great to follow. A welcome change of pace for Mr. Dark. Now, obviously, Mr. Dark, pretty arbitrary bad guy, Mr. Dark, Mr. Evil, whatever. Whereas these characters and antagonists have a real, sort of fleshed out, well thought out, clever kind of arc and narrative. Now, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I wanted to see. It's dark, it's intense, it's well thought out, it's well written, it's well paced, it's got twists and turns, it's got pathos, it's got intrigue. This is just great, frankly, and this makes the whole Mr. Dark and all those kind of tedious stories we've dealt with for the last kind of 3 deluxe hardcovers, it makes it all totally worthwhile. So it ends with this scene with someone at the door and talking, and there's snow and so on. So we'll just remember that for now. That's how this particular arc, the Cubs in Toyland arc, ends. We then go into a one-off story called The Destiny Game, which is just kind of a story about the history of Bigby and some stuff that happened back in the homelands. Very different artwork style here for lots of reasons, not least of all the fact that you can see it's full bleed to the edge. Different kind of framing, different kind of artwork. But it's a good story, and largely in keeping with kind of how Fable stories work. So this is more of a vignette or kind of a side story to things. We then go into the Snow White story, which again is like an epilogue or an afterlude to the Mr. Dark stories we've seen with the vanquishing of Mr. Dark in the last deluxe edition. But again, this now is where stuff gets interesting. This is where the Fables are going back to Fabletown. This is where they're interacting with a couple of the human-sized or human-looking antagonists that we've seen over the previous couple of hardcovers, and that's just really, really interesting. This character in particular is very well characterized, really menacing. I mean, in just a series of panels, this character is far more terrifying and far more fleshed out than Mr. Dark ever was. So again, this is a brilliant story. It's a great story about Snow White. It's a great story about the Fables, and it ends with the death of a key and really pivotal character that we've seen so far. Can't stress it enough. Well written, well drawn, well put together. It is a great story. And again, it is a fantastic payoff for all that Mr. Dark nonsense we've gone through for several hardcovers. Frankly, I could have done without all those. It does tee up this storyline where his former followers are now antagonists against Fabletown. I get that, but I'm pretty sure there's a better way they could have set that up. That said, this story is just great. It's really, really, really enjoyable. And it's a really clever story about Snow White in the fore, and it's about her vanquishing the 2 antagonists from the Mr. Dark arc, which are Mrs. Spratt and then this antagonist, respectively, which obviously I'm not going to spoil that. I'm trying to keep this relatively spoiler light, even though I'm giving more details. So this story ends, as I say, with the death of a key protagonist, which is very, very sad indeed. And then the last page of this, the very last page of this, ends here. So while the artwork is different, obviously you can see here, it's the same idea. It's someone at the door speaking to Snow and asking some questions. So this is the exact same scene that we'd seen at the end of Cubs in Toyland. So again, this moment and this dialogue, by the way, is verbatim identical to this dialogue, by the way. So the important thing to keep in mind when you're reading this is that whilst there is no perfect way to read it, because both these stories and trade paperbacks happen exactly in parallel, I would recommend reading it in the order of publication. I always advocate following order of publication wherever possible. So then that story ends. We then have a few extra features, which are the usual kind of art and so on. And you then have some biographical details of the various creators as well. And that takes us through Deluxe Edition 13. I have to be honest, I finished reading this and I put it down and I just kind of said to an empty room, God damn, that was amazing. It was really, really good. I wasn't expecting much. Fables has gone steadily downhill since about hardcover 9, I think. But this is an absolute rousing return to form. Perhaps I'm biased, perhaps I'm prejudiced, but I just found Mr. Dark and all those stories to be quite tedious, as I said in all of my videos. But this now is where we're no longer having random MacGuffin-y villains twirling their mustache and being evil for no reason. What we have now are well characterized, well thought out stories, and it was a great read. So, highly recommended. Really enjoyed it. Lamentably, it doesn't make sense unless you read the preceding hardcovers. So, this isn't a case where I would just remove a few things from my collection and just keep the issues that I want. You have to keep the story in toto. But I would argue that book 13 does make the trudge of the last few hardcovers worthwhile. It's a rousing return to form, and it's got me excited to do the homework for next week, which is going to be Fables Deluxe Edition, book 14. I will see everyone then.
All right, thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at I am Thomas Judge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.